we've covered a lot of like art scams, etc. on this channel, but one that I haven't seen yet is a traditional switcheroo, because this is something that happened to a couple that went to their local art fair over the weekend. Let's delve into the situation of the acrylic painting. And again, don't send hate or bully any parties involved. So this is a post made by user Midwest Munchers. They posted this on Threads. They also posted this to TikTok as well. And they captioned this, "You can't even make this stuff up. Here's how we got scammed at an art fair this weekend." So it's like, here's how we got scammed at art fair this weekend, featuring her looking real happy at the art fair. People are shopping around in the back. So her husband is holding a painting and he looks super happy about that. She captions it, "My husband found this painting he loved, and shockingly, I loved it too. We never agree on art, so we knew we had to buy it." I relate to this so much as somebody with a partner. Like, our design tastes are very different. So when we find something we agree on, it's a really like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it moment. So I could totally, understand the excitement of like, oh my God, my partner and I actually agreed on this painting. The caption continues, "We got to talking to the artist and he shared that he painted it last night and explained how he used acrylic paints to get the colors just right. We paid $250 for the painting. Before we left the art fair, my husband started to get suspicious that it wasn't a real painting." I'm curious, they never specified, but I'm just curious as to what made him feel this way, what kind of ticked him off that maybe something might not be fully legitimate or correct with this painting. It continues, "He went back to talk to the artist and the artist insisted that he painted the picture the night before. So we brought the painting home and my husband still had a nagging feeling that something wasn't right, dot, dot, dot. So he put it into Google Lens." Boom. Which is how we found out that we paid $250 for a $60 print at Target. What? I went and Googled Target print, and this actually was the first image that came up. A Threshold 24-inch by 30-inch colorful landscape canvas board framed art by Threshold. And here they say, yup, definitely the exact same picture. And here you can see the side by side, one of her husband holding the painting and one of the cutout from Target. The husband went back and showed the artist proof that it wasn't a real painting, and the artist immediately gave him a full refund. The art fair organizers found out about what the artist was doing and asked him to pack up and leave. Life's never boring, I'll give you that. That absolutely sucks, man, because we've talked about so many art scammers, a lot of digital ones who will steal other people's artwork printed out and then sell it at conventions. There was a really notable one, Christopher Coates, and I've talked about him multiple times on my channel because he was doing that many, many times, claiming all the art was his. But I haven't seen a traditional one yet, where they would take artwork sold by somebody else, like, I don't know, Target, and then pass that off as their own artwork. A lot of people in the comments had some things to say. A user commented, "Your first clue should have been the fact that the artist, in quotes, painted it the night before. The paint would still be wet, too wet to frame." Which, I don't work that much in traditional. I've done some traditional work. It definitely can be possible, but it also depends on what paint was and what the material is and the temperature, and also how dry and like humid the environment is. There can be some situations where you can paint something overnight and then have it dry by the morning if the environmental conditions are lined up, and possibly if you're using acrylic paint because it tends to dry faster. Another person adds, "Well, he could have painted something like that the night before. The big clue to me as an actual artist is that anybody reputable would have varnished it before selling. It's best to wait a couple days, varnish over 2 to 3 days depending on coats and method, and allow the stink to go away, then sell. Glad you got the money back." Another person adds, "Tip, $250 for an original painting that size is way too low," which is also fair. Look, every artist has their own pricing, whatever. I've typically seen original paintings of this size going at least $1,000, at least. So, $250, it's on the cheaper end for sure. Another commenter says, "Not Bradley putting his artist's signature and date on the painting in the corner." Because yeah, did you guys catch that? If we go over to the picture here, you can see, let me zoom in, it says in what looks like purple Sharpie, Bradley 2026. This also to me is a big giveaway because okay, artists can sign their pieces in whichever way they want, whichever location. I love having signed work because it feels like a strong connection to the artist. They don't often sign it with such boldly contrasting, conflicting color there's no purple anywhere else on the canvas. There's maybe some soft lilac, but this is like a purple. And they typically would do it in a more slightly obscure location, like more in the corners or something. Bro put it like 3 inches up from the bottom and 3 inches in from the right. That's pretty notable. You know, we can see some examples. Like if you look it up, you know, people signing art pieces, Monet's signature, it's written on the bottom though. You know, this signature kind of signed in here, signed on the bottom, or, you know, with some colors that tends to match the canvas a little bit better. Some more signatures. Purple Sharpie probably wouldn't be like my first go-to, but there were a fair amount of people in the comments, you know, blaming this couple, being like, well, you should have known, serves you right, da-da-da. I don't think it's fair to say that. I don't think it's fair to bully or like, you know, make fun of people for falling for a scam. Look, if you're an artist, to you, this probably would look pretty obvious. You would look at it and be like, okay, night before, $250, way too cheap. Signature doesn't seem to match very well. Bringing a lot of alarm bells here, right? Another alarm bell, if you just take a look at the rest of the artwork that this person allegedly has, right? Because you can see some of it in the background of what's being sold. And artists are allowed to draw whatever they want, but they typically work in a specified medium for the most part. This is a landscape painting, but if you look in the background, we have portraits and dog pet portraits. Pets and people are also two different subjects to draw, and landscape is another subject. So this person is painting in 3 separate subjects, which, I mean, you can, I'm not saying you cannot do that. Many artists are talented and can draw in many different means. You don't necessarily see such a big spread in art styles. It's not the most common. But anyways, I digress. The point that I'm trying to make is that if you're an artist, all of these red flags may seem very apparent to you. But if you're not an artist, it may not be as obvious, right? This is just a couple. I don't know if they're an artist. It doesn't seem like they are. They might not be as familiar with artwork. So they're walking around, you know, she gets excited that her husband has a painting that they both love. So she wants to introduce it into her household. And the artist, who is the scammer, is lying to them, being like, yeah, I painted this. Don't worry, like, it's got my signature on it. I painted it last night. I did that, you know? So like, what are you supposed to do if you don't know any art and the artist that's there is lying to your face, scamming you, insisting that they painted this themselves when they did not? What are you gonna do, right? So I don't fault them at all for falling for this. I always say this: if you think you're not gonna fall for a scam, you are the prime victim actually for a scam. I hope none of you guys get scammed, but you know what I'm saying, right? None of you guys are above scams. Everyone falls for them. But there were other people saying, hey, like, how did you not notice? You should have noticed that there's no paint strokes on it, right? No brush strokes, etc. And a user adds, the people in the comments trying to shame you are ridiculous and annoying. There are mass-produced prints that have textures added to them to look like they're painting. Target definitely sells prints like that. And they add, the detail he added about painting it the night before was a weird detail for him to throw out there though. And yeah, that is something that you will see in a lot of these mass-produced prints. They will use some sort of like varnish or whatever and add like little brush strokes with like a knife or whatever, like here, 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 here. So when you tilt it from the side, it does have like texture to it. So it looks like, you know, to somebody who maybe doesn't know art, that it was hand painted, where it's not. It's a digital image that they then varnish over it with some texture. And to a similar comment, another user adds, I have this print. It's on canvas and has chunky paint strokes. People who come to my house often think it's real and I have to tell them I got it at Target. And again, the worst part is this isn't the only instance. This is just an instance where the person actually found out because their gut told them something was wrong and they Google Lens searched it. A commenter says, in my teens, I worked for a guy who had a picture framing company. On Sundays, I worked overtime at a market selling framed oil paintings he provided. He called them Tommy Wong specials because he bought them in bulk from Hong Kong. They were painted on a production line. Also low-key weird to call them Tommy Wong specials unless you know that the guy's name is Tommy Wong, you know. Another user says, I fell for the same scam in Cusco, Peru. There was a young man selling paintings of the city on the sidewalk. They were on canvas with acrylic paints and I thought they were beautiful. I shared them with my father, who I was traveling with, and he immediately burst out laughing. He told me that I could get the exact same paintings on any street in Cusco. And he said when you get home, you can find them all over eBay. He was right. Another person adds, I was next to a woman selling handmade jewelry at an art show a few years ago. It was obvious to all the nearby vendors that it was cheap crap from China, but she insisted she made it. The earrings were literally in the cellophane bags they came in from the wholesaler. I ran into her at another handmade show only a few months later and threw her under the bus hard with the organizers. Another vendor at the first show reported her and they banned her. She had balls, I'll give you that. Another one also I want to add is the freaking crochet ones. Okay, as somebody who's like getting into crocheting takes freaking forever. 10 bajillion years. Look at those little Miffies. I made one of the big one on stream, right? These little Miffies, each of them, and I'm slow, right? Because I'm new. I'm learning. I'm only on my 2nd year. More experienced crocheters could probably do it quicker. 2.5 hours per Miffy, okay? You think I'm gonna be able to rack up this massive spread of little bunny keychains for a show a week? No, hell no. And if you see a crocheter selling their crocheted works, they're probably sitting there and crocheting at the booth because it takes so freaking long. You're taking every spare second to crochet. I'm crocheting at like restaurants, dude, because it takes so long. And this is a sweater that I'm working on. I don't got that much time, okay? So I'm working on it. So that's a big one with the crochet. If they got a bajillion different little crochet animals and you talk to them and they're like, my team made it, and you don't see them crocheting right then and there, likely drop shipping from China. Obviously, disclaimer, right? There's many crocheters who might have a partner or a helper step in to man the booth for them. So the helper doesn't know how to crochet, so they're not crocheting. The partner doesn't know how to crochet, so they're not crocheting. But with those people, they'll be like, oh yeah, my wife made it, my boyfriend made it, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Right? And then you come back later and you see the wife or the boyfriend or whatever, they're crocheting. It's not one person being like, oh, it's my team of 5 from China making it. So you're drop selling. Like, wait, is that even a word? Drop shipping is the word. Another commenter adds, this was in Mount Horeb. We were working the booth directly across the aisle from this guy. He had a lot of physical items like chairs with designs. It wasn't just prints. I don't quite know why somebody who was a creator of some works would misrepresent others. The show closed him down immediately and he refunded the buyer's money, but he seemed pretty genuine, even chatting with other booths for a while after he got shut down. This is pretty terrible, but I wish I understood it a lot better. Side note, what's really funny is I went and looked up this art fair, the Mount Horeb Art Fair, and they have the most AI generated looking picture ever on their website with like people's faces in the background melting. I don't know what's happening to this guy. They could have just ran a picture through AI or something to get this, but I thought that was funny. So anyways, what are your thoughts on the story? And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Again, scamming with AI, generative AI, and all that sort, never okay. Don't scam people, man. And again, if somebody fell for a scam, there's no need to be mean. There's no need to be rude in the comment section. They're an unfortunate person that didn't recognize that this was a scam and accidentally fell for it, okay? But if you are shopping around for some artwork and you see a traditional piece that you like, couple of things, that you could use, check off this checklist. 1, reverse image search to make sure it doesn't actually appear anywhere else. But 2, talk to the artist. Do they have other prints in a similar style? Artists typically, they have a favorable medium and a subject they'd like to paint. So they typically will paint only portraits or mainly like pets or mainly landscapes. So a consistency across what they're selling is a good one. 3, if the pricing seems fair. For a full painting like that of that size, it typically goes for at least $1,000. Rarely will find it in the 250s, 300 range. That's very low. And if it sounds a little too good to be true, it possibly could be a scam. And then another one, if they're signing it with a purple Sharpie in a pretty notable spot on the art piece, probably a pretty fair sign that maybe something's up here. But again, everybody falls for scams. I'm glad they were able to get the money back. I'm glad the fair organizers worked swiftly on it and booted the person out. So thankfully, it was all resolved. But again, would love to hear your thoughts with respect in the comment section down below. If you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. And guys, we are about to hit 300k subs. I think by the time this video is live, we might be at 300, which I'm so excited for. Thank you guys so much, by the way. Yay! I appreciate it. I do stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where I do a podcast with my friend. So I hope to catch y'all there or in another one of my videos. Peace.